Welcome to Codex, a history of video games. My name is Tyler Osby.
And I am Mike Coletta.
And this week, we're going to be talking about the history of the Nintendo GameCube. But before we get started, Mike, you want to do the top of the show?
Yeah, so we're going to do things a little differently. We're going to do the plugs up top so we can just get into it. So as always, we'd love a rate and review and subscribe on iTunes or Stitcher or Google Play or wherever you get your podcast. That means the world to us. Also, we have an email that's codexhistorypodcast@gmail.com. So you can email us there. Also, we are both on Twitter at SneakerElf with an ELPH for Tyler, and then at mecoletta, MECOLETTA. Also, I have a cold and I'm mildly nasally, so we're going to do this.
Yeah.
All right. Are you ready to talk about the thing today? I'm super stoked.
Me too.
About it.
Oh, this is going to be great. Love the GameCube. The GameCube is, yeah.
Yeah, we're talking about the history of the Nintendo GameCube. And I learned if we want to get into the history of the Nintendo GameCube, we got to start with a company called ArtX. So ArtX...
What's ArtX?
I'm going to tell you. It's a company that started in 1997 when 20 former Silicon Graphics Incorporated employees formed this new company called ArtX. And
Silicon Graphics, they're the ones that made the graphics chip for the Nintendo 64, right? The Ultra 64.
Yeah, they designed the N64, which is why it's kind of a big deal. Because it's like, we're branching off and doing our own thing. And ArtX, their whole mission was to create a cost-effective, high-end graphics processor that could compete with NVIDIA and other major graphics, I guess GPU companies is how I would describe it at the time.
Like Voodoo and...
Yeah.
That's
and
all
ATI,
I can think of.
right? ATI? Wouldn't they
Well, they later get bought by ATI.
That is true. They do get bought later, but would they have tried to compete with ATI at first, or are they a different kind of company?
You're right. Yeah, I guess you're right. Yeah.
That's probably why ATI bought them. They're like, look how dangerous this company is. But
yeah, scary.
Yeah, so ArtX was formerly made of Silicon Graphics Incorporated, and they designed the Nintendo 64's fundamental architecture under Dr. Wei Yan. He's the one that was the head of Nintendo operations at SGI, which I thought was interesting that a company has a whole branch dedicated to another company. I didn't know about this, but it seems cool. So ArtX was then contracted by Nintendo in May of 1998 to create the system logic and the graphics processor codenamed Flipper for Nintendo's fourth game console, codenamed Dolphin. Flipper, Dolphin, makes a lot of sense.
Flipper the Dolphin, yep.
I think Dolphin is a really cool name for a system.
Me too. I remember there's an old issue of Nintendo Power magazine that I had where, so like in the beginning, the front of the magazine they always had like reader mail, and somebody mailed in something and they were saying, oh man, I have this great idea for what the Dolphin console should look like. And like, it could be shaped like a dolphin, and it could have, you put the cartridge in the mouth of the dolphin, and it could take cartridges from any Nintendo game. And I was like, oh man, that's like peak like 8-year-old designing a console. Like, you play any game you want, it looks like a dolphin, so cool.
I think it'd be awesome. Also, it's just fun to say, oh, real quick, I gotta go plug in my Dolphin. That's just a fun phrase,
Yeah, the best GameCube emulator is called Dolphin.
Oh, really?
That's why it's called Dolphin, yeah.
Everyone, just know that if you want to emulate some GameCube games, go on, get Dolphin. Yep. Now you know. Also, I should say, I got this next fact from this IGN article called It's Alive, which is like a hype article for the GameCube. But the original in-house code name for the system was not Dolphin. It was actually the N2000.
They were shooting for a year 2000 release date.
Yeah, and then Dolphin became the nickname when it was announced at a press conference in May of 1999 as Project Dolphin, but everyone just shortened that to Dolphin. Like, take the project off of it, Let's not get projects rolled into it. Let's make it sound fun. So I think it's important to note that Silicon Graphics Incorporated actually filed a non-compete lawsuit against ArtX due to them essentially, their argument was, hey, we designed the N64 graphics with your 20 employees. How are you going to create this new card without using our old ideas? And it makes sense. It's a valid lawsuit, I think.
Yeah, where if like a whole bunch of people leave and it's like, all these people made stuff here and now they just went to make their own company to make the same kind of stuff. Like, you're trying to tell me that they're not going to use our intellectual property to do that?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And the weird thing, though, and I couldn't find anything else about this, is the lawsuit was weirdly just dropped with no explanation in 1998, right when Nintendo started working with ArtX. So I don't know if there was like a settlement
Nintendo
involved.
probably Yeah, Nintendo probably walked in there and was like, hey, we can run you through the ground with this lawsuit if you want to drag it out, or you could just drop it and we'll just pretend it never happened.
Yeah, I'm curious what Nintendo did. But so the next thing is once Flipper was completed, the next step was Nintendo's like, okay, we have our basic architecture. Then they sent out dev kits to Rare and Retro Studios, very Nintendo loyal game studios. And they had that going for them. They like only really to the people, I think it was like to Rare and Retro were the only two that got it I could find because they're like the Super Nintendo studios. Not Super Nintendo studios, but the main the Nintendo studio. I use Super, not like the Super, you know what I mean? I'm confusing myself. But the chip for the GameCube was actually designed by IBM, and that was codenamed Gecko.
Oh man,
so a lot of animals, a lot of animal things going on here.
I like when they theme things like the dolphin was like dolphin and sort of animal themed. The Wii was Hollywood and Broadway were the names of the chips, and the Wii U, all the chips are different like types of coffee. It's interesting. I think that's
That
funny.
is funny. I like how remember we did that episode on Atari and they named the chipset after that lady who would ride her bicycle to the office.
Yeah.
So, I guess this is better than that for sure. So,
Yeah.
Once the Flipper was completed in the year 2000, it's important to note that big graphics company ATI then bought ArtX, which, as Tyler said before, it was a big buyout thing. And ATI didn't have anything to do with the design process. Everyone says ATI was not involved in the design process, but they were involved in manufacturing and supplying those chips to Nintendo, which is pretty important, I feel like. So ATI stepped in, manufactured all those chips.
Yep.
Then, Nintendo announced the GameCube under the name GameCube for the first time at a press conference in Japan on August 24th, 2000. And here's something that kind of threw me off. The GameCube in Japan was abbreviated NGC, Nintendo GameCube. Makes a lot of sense, I think, right? In America, it's GCN, GameCube Nintendo.
I wonder why they did, like, I guess NGC could be like Neo Geo Color or something like that, but that would have also been in Japan, right?
Yeah, I've been trying to figure this out. And even if you look at Mario Kart, the new Mario Karts, when it's a GameCube track, it says GCN. They still stick to that abbreviation. It just seems weird to me. Right?
Yeah, that is kind of weird. They still stuck with it. I'm trying to think if the Neo Geo Color was called Neo Geo Color in Japan, maybe they weren't worried about confusion.
Oh, maybe that's it. That would make sense. I mean, I think you nailed it. If it was Neo Geo Color in North America, then they have to make it GCN in North America, right? To not confuse it. But sorry, this was one of those things I found, and I was like, really puzzled me, and I don't really know why. Hey, listener, if you know why, get at us at
Drop
that
us a
email
line, yeah,
or on Twitter. Anyway, Nintendo unveiled its software lineup for the 6th generation console at E3 2001, and they had 15 launch games announced.
They weren't doing that Nintendo 64 thing where they're like, 2 games.
They're like, we're going to show this off right now. And the stars they had were Luigi's Mansion, great game.
Very good.
Wave Race Blue Storm.
Also great.
And Star Wars Rogue Squadron 2 Rogue Leader, which was a personal favorite of yours truly. I love that game.
They had that one at the like demo booths at toy stores all the time. I played it all the time there. Like Toys R Us.
I miss those demo booths. They have them at GameStop still, I think, right?
Yeah, I think so.
And Best Buy. I just miss a good demo booth. Okay, important to note. The GameCube did have the problem of it ain't got no games at launch.
It got no games?
It did. Because a lot of these titles got delayed. So it kind of hurt the GameCube launch. I'm just saying it now to get it out of the way. If you're like, oh, the GameCube, they were so prepared. They were supposedly prepared. And then a lot of stuff went awry. The GameCube, is important to note too, is the first Nintendo console to not include a Super Mario game at launch.
Oh, yeah. Wow, I guess you're right. Super Smash Bros. Melee was not technically a launch title, but it came out like a week or two after the GameCube. So it was like right in there.
That was definitely noted in one of the articles I read about like when things came out. They're like, yeah, Melee came out very quickly afterward. Yeah. So I think I think it ain't got no games like third-party titles.
Yeah,
But-
that's always been Nintendo's problem. Ain't got no third-party games.
Yeah, but they had Super Smash Bros. Melee, and then there was another one that came out. It wasn't Double Dash, was it? I don't think Double Dash came out around
No,
launch.
Double Dash was a few years later.
Oh, Pikmin. Pikmin came out.
Oh, yeah, that was a weird game.
Yeah, it was a weird game, but Pikmin came out kind of closer to launch too. Here's something I did not know at all. And Nintendo actually had motion controls in mind for the GameCube. Did you know this?
No.
I had no idea. They were working with a developer named Factor 5.
Oh,
But-
they're the ones that made Rogue Squadron.
Oh, really? But yeah, because the controls obviously weren't ready in time, but that same technology would be used later for the Wiimote. So that's a cool thing to
yeah,
know.
that makes sense.
Yeah.
So that motion control stuff was in the works for a long time.
Oh, yeah. I always thought of it, too, because I'm like, they technically had some of the technology with the Zapper, right? But that was infrared. That's not the same kind of...
Yeah, that was like an
Motion
optical
control.
kind of different sort of deal. Yeah, it wasn't
Because that
motion.
same technology I looked up, and we're going to get to it, I guess it's kind of later on when we talk about wireless controllers for the GameCube, but Nintendo thought of making a wireless controller for the Famicom using that same infrared technology, but instead of it being like your controller is wireless, your controller was wired into a hub, and that hub was wireless, and it would shoot an infrared signal to the GameCube.
Oh, so that the hub could stay stationary, probably in the
Yeah.
right spot to blast the IR, where so you could still move the controller around. Because everybody knows when you're racing, you got to turn the controller. It's better if you
That's
turn
right.
the controller when you're turning.
Yeah, and I think it was for the Famicom, and it had 4 plugins, so you could do like 4-player, which I think is pretty
nice.
cool. But okay, the marketing campaign for the GameCube started at E3 2001 with the slogan "The Nintendo Difference." How does that make you feel?
Wow, I don't even remember it.
The other one, more commonly, because it was on TV, was "Born to Play." Remember that one?
Yeah, I remember that one, and I remember the "Who Are You" campaign.
Ooh, I
the
didn't
i-
look up this one.
The idea was that like you are what you play, so it was like it would be like people with like different Nintendo characters on their head.
Oh man, they're making it like a part of your identity.
Yeah,
That's
Yeah, I
really
had a-
intense.
whole lot of things that just said "Who are you" on it. I don't know why I have a whole lot of stuff, but
I think I
Yeah.
know why you have it, because you're a Nintendo head.
I
If
am.
they put it on you on the commercial, your head would just be like a creepy Island of Dr. Moreau mashup of all the Nintendo characters. It would look terrifying.
yeah, it would just open its mouth and say "Kill me."
On May 21st, 2001, the GameCube's launch price was announced at a very low $199.
Ooh, beating both the PS2 and the Xbox by
Yeah.
$100.
Yeah, very much looking to compete. So the GameCube launched first in Japan on September 14th, 2001, and retailers received approximately 500,000 units in time for that release date, which seems low to me. And it is low.
Only for Japan though. Yeah,
there-
okay. Still
There
low.
was it is low because there was a console shortage there that affected the North America launch. So the North America's original date was going to come out on November 5th, 2001. And then instead, the console released on November 18th, 2001, and they shipped 700,000 units, which
Wow.
for North America, all of it seems like low. I feel like you got to
Yeah.
have like a million, especially in like the 2000s.
Mm-hmm.
In Europe and in other areas of the world, they would not get the console until Q2 of 2002.
Dang.
Yeah, which is a bummer.
I'm so
But
glad
now-
we're past those days of like staggered launches like that. Nowadays, it's like console comes out same day everywhere, all over
Oh,
the world.
yeah. And they have so many now, too.
Yeah.
They know. They're like, we were never selling, which is why I think the whole pre-ordering games is just a sham,
Yeah, sure is.
You're going to have a ton of copies. I'm going to be fine. So,
Yeah.
all right. Do you want to talk about the specs of the GameCube?
Yeah. So first, it's important to note that the GameCube was the first Nintendo system to use an optical disc instead of a cartridge. They finally broke down after years of PlayStation fanboys talking about how their CDs were better, and they were better in a lot of ways. And they finally broke down, and they developed a proprietary mini DVD format capable of holding 1.5 gigabytes of data. The reason they chose to go with this mini DVD format over full-size DVDs was for a few reasons. One, they thought piracy would be harder with those discs. I don't know if that was the case. They did increase loading speed, so load times were much quicker with those discs because there's
Smaller.
just less. They're smaller,
Yeah.
and there's just less physical area to cover. And so what I think is the biggest reason is because they didn't have to pay licensing fees to the DVD for them because they're technically not DVDs. They're like heavily based on DVDs. The drive can read DVDs, but technically they're not. So they didn't have to pay licensing fees, which I think is something Nintendo's always looking to weasel out of.
That means for them, it was cheaper to create their own proprietary mini DVD, invent a whole new thing, than to just have. They must have borrowed so much from DVDs. They had to.
Yeah, I think, it's pretty similar. I mean, the drive can read mini DVDs as far as I know, like just smaller DVDs. Because if you have a mod chip and you burn games, you can burn them onto just small DVDs and they work. But yeah, the format technically isn't a DVD. So that also means that the GameCube can't play movie DVDs, which is a whole other licensing thing that they would have had to pay for. But the DVDs don't even fit in there, so you can't play them.
I have a question for you, Tyler.
Yeah.
Do the mini DVDs fit in the PC?
Yes, they do.
GameCube game. Oh, so you could play an emulator that way.
You can. This is off of my dome here. I'm not sure exactly. I think there's only a few.
Welcome back to Off the Top of the Dome with Tyler Otsby. Here we go.
Yeah, I think there are very few actual PC DVD drives that can read GameCube discs. I think they exist. I think there's a few that can do it that are made by like Panasonic or something. But yeah, DVD drives, PC DVD drives can read those smaller discs in general, but I don't think they can read GameCube games usually. I guess the answer is probably no.
Probably no. You heard it here first, folks. That was Off the Dome with Tyler Otsby.
Yeah. So the DVD thing actually would kind of bite Nintendo in the butt, if you ask me, because they couldn't play movie DVDs, and so you couldn't buy a PS2. You couldn't. Kids didn't have the excuse of saying to their parents, "Oh, well, it's a DVD player," also like they do with the PS2 and the Xbox. So even though it was $100 cheaper, I still think not having DVD playback capability is one of the things that hurt them, similar to the Dreamcast because it couldn't play DVDs either, and that kind of hurt it when it
you
went up
gotta be
against
able to
the
watch
PS2.
those movies.
Yeah,
all about those movies.
I know. And as we said before, IBM partnered with Nintendo to design the CPU. So, they ended up with a PowerPC-based processor, which, as we said before, called Gecko, which runs at 485 megahertz and features a floating point unit capable of 1.9 gigaflops.
Gigaflops. I told Tyler I looked up what that meant while I was researching this. Oh, man. Giga's a lot. I'm going to tell you that much, team.
It's a billion, I think, right? A billion floating point operations per second.
It is a billion, yeah.
Yeah. PowerPC-based processors would become all the rage in the next generation, with the PlayStation 3, the Xbox 360, and the Wii all utilizing some form of PowerPC architecture. IBM really made out like a bandit that generation with their processors.
Dang, good for you, IBM.
Yeah. They crushed it. The GPU was designed by Artex, which became a subsidiary of ATI, which was later bought by AMD in 2006. Nintendo's relationship with AMD would endure through the Wii U, but it would be dropped when Nintendo partnered with NVIDIA for the Switch. So the GameCube was based on ATI/AMD technology. The Wii was based on AMD technology. The Wii U based on AMD technology. But then once the Switch came out, that was all NVIDIA tech. So
okay, Tyler, I'm going to sound like a real noob. Welcome back to Mike's Noob Corner. This is our other segment. NVIDIA is considered like top of the line, right?
Yeah, for PC graphics cards right now.
For PC graphics cards, like NVIDIA is like, is that why you think they went to the Switch? They're like, we got to go quality.
No, the reason I think they went to NVIDIA for the Switch is because NVIDIA has an ARM system, like a low power system called Tegra that you can run. Like there's a lot of Android devices will use Tegra chips, especially like set-top boxes. And so for Nintendo to go to NVIDIA and get the Tegra chip for their for the Switch was actually makes it more or less off the shelf. It's not very custom piece of hardware. The Switch is when you get down to the silicon, it's basically an NVIDIA Shield but underclocked.
Oh wow!
Yeah, so that's why, because NVIDIA already had a whole system set up. That's I'm spitballing here. I'm speculating. I don't know exactly why they went with NVIDIA, but that's, I think, why.
You know what? I believe it. It sounds right to me.
Cool.
Yeah. So what's the next thing? Sorry, I interrupted you.
I just wanted to point out that if you look on the front of the GameCube, there's a little, in the bottom right corner, it's like a little made with ATI sticker on it. And I remember seeing that when I was like 12 years old and being like, man, this thing's legit. It's got a real graphics card from ATI in it.
I could just see you being like, oh, Nintendo, don't mess around. They're into it.
Yeah. The video output of the GameCube used the standard AV output that Nintendo had been using since the Super Nintendo for composite video and audio output. This would be the last console that Nintendo used this port on. GameCubes built before 2004, however, also had a digital AV port, which allowed the use of a component adapter to connect to some of the more advanced TVs at the time. These kinds of TVs were being sold as ED TVs, or enhanced definition, where they weren't HD, they weren't 720p or 1080p, they were 480p instead of 480i, which looked a little bit better. But it was like this sort of new thing that like DVDs supported. Like if you had a really high-end system, you had one of these TVs. And so the GameCube supported those TVs with composite video output, which it just had better video quality in general, but then also for games that supported it, they could output in progressive scan mode for those ED TVs.
Ooh, GameCube.
Yeah, it's pretty sweet. The PS2 and the Xbox could also do that. So, and it's important to know that. But then after 2004, Nintendo decided, you know what? Nobody's really using this thing, so we're just going to pull it out and save costs on it. Nowadays, the cable itself is extremely rare because it was really only for the high-end TVs of its day. But the cable goes for about $200 on eBay right now if you want that component output cable.
Whoa.
Because people can't make like a knockoff of it because a lot of the logic on the circuit board inside the cable plug-in is like why that cable costs so much to begin with, but then it also like you can't replicate it now either, so you can't just buy like third-party GameStop component cables. You have to buy the Nintendo thing, and they stopped making them. So yeah, if you're trying to get the best possible picture quality out of your GameCube, you got to use those cables, although you're probably better off just buying a Wii and using the component cables for that system because they're way cheaper.
Is it the same kind of cable?
No, it's not. It's a different plug.
Oh.
It has it. They're just dumb cables. They don't have actual logic going on in them like the GameCube ones did. So yeah, the Wii one is much cheaper. The bottom of the GameCube has 3 ports for accessories. I don't know if you've ever looked at the bottom of a GameCube, but there's like 3 little things you can pull out of there. Yeah. One of those ports was reserved for a network adapter, so you could get both a dial-up and a broadband adapter. The other port was only ever officially used by the Game Boy Player accessory that allowed people to play Game Boy games on their TV, which was pretty neat. I think that's the only thing that ever used it. Maybe some like weird third-party mod things used it, but that's the only thing Nintendo ever made that used it. And then the last port was never used by anything ever. So later on, like they pulled out the digital out port, they also pulled out that cable. I just learned that recently. I didn't know they had pulled that thing because literally nothing ever used it ever.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Never ever used?
Never used. Just like the bottom of the Nintendo 64 has an external port on it. Never used by anything except maybe the 64 disk drive in Japan. That was only in Japan. And same with the Super Nintendo. There's an external, or there's like a extension port on the bottom of that as well. Not used by anything in the United States. Probably used by a couple of weird accessories in Japan.
Oh, yeah. By the way, I forgot to put 2 things in here I noticed. And I'm going to do the first one right now. And that is it took memory cards. We should say that.
Yeah, no onboard storage like the Xbox, so it was like the PS2 had only memory cards.
They did I think what was the size? Oh, they had multiple options. So they had a 512 kilobyte, 251 or memory card 251, so that was 2 megabytes. They had an 8 megabyte. They had and then they also had I think they go up to 64 it said. 64
megabits. They're
megabits. Oh yeah,
they're super weird the way they did it. So like the memory cards are measured in blocks on the GameCube. So it was like there's like memory card 59, which had 59 blocks, and then there was the 251, which had 251 blocks, and then there was like a 4096 or something like that.
Oh, so I was reading it wrong. Oh yeah. Also, it says you can get big ones, but they were all third party. That was like the size that they did for that. Okay. Now.
There was an SD card adapter in Japan, too.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, man. I actually have a little picture of memory card 59, and guess what? Just looks like a playing gray card that says Nintendo GameCube on it, like they all do.
Yep.
Not a lot changed in the look of those in between. Now, we're going to talk about the controller.
Oh, yeah.
I think this might be in my top 5 controllers.
It's a great controller.
It's a beautiful looking controller. Very blue, very like navy blue. The GameCube and Xbox, I guess I should say, were both super influenced by Sony's DualShock controller that came out on PlayStation 1. Not launch PlayStation, but came out later. And both decided to use that dual analog stick design, but Nintendo and Xbox decided to stagger their analog sticks. If you recall, a PlayStation controller has 2 analog sticks below the D-pad and the triangle square buttons and all that stuff at the same level. The GameCube controller put the D-pad down and put the left analog stick above it. And that was kind of a big thing. Also, the GameCube's dual stick, the right stick was actually the C stick, which became from the C buttons on the Nintendo 64 controller. So they did move the D-pad down. They had an A button, which was very big, if I recall, big blue button. And the A button was bigger than all the other buttons. And Nintendo did this because that was usually the main button for everything. So they're like, why not just make it bigger? And they rubberized that control stick on the left, and they had that oversized A button, and a lot of thought was put into that to prevent something they referred to as, quote, Nintendo thumb, where your hands started to hurt after playing for long periods of time. And I think I got that with my NES.
Yeah.
It would like hurt because it would like dig into your thumb. The C buttons became that C stick, and that C stick was mostly used in most of the games I played to control the view camera. Did you use it for anything else? Do you remember using it for anything else?
No, I remember in the GameCube re-release of Ocarina of Time, it kind of took the place of the C buttons, so that's how you like used your items. Yeah, that's about all I can think of what it was used for.
Yeah, it was mostly used as a camera, so I guess C for camera, that would make more sense. The controller had 2 triggers, LT and RT, and then above the right trigger was the Z button.
Oh, yeah.
The little blue Z button, which was also used as a Z. So if you played Ocarina of Time re-released, that would be your Z targeting. Is my guess. Now, the controller was smaller in size than the N64 controller, but the GameCube controller was heavier because they finally put in a built-in rumble pack. You don't have to buy an accessory. It's built into the controller. Yeah, there you go. And now, let's talk about the most exciting thing about the controllers on the GameCube, and that is they released a wireless one, referred to as the Wavebird.
This is still the best wireless controller I've ever used.
Really?
Like, it always works.
It always works. It was the first time Nintendo or any actual video game company manufactured their own first-party wireless controller. And you would plug a dongle into the controller input of your GameCube and then turn on your Wavebird using 2 AA batteries, and boom, you were connected with an RF signal. And the controller and the dongle both had a channel selection dial, so you could have multiple Wavebirds plugged in and they wouldn't interfere with each other. Or if you're my brother and I, you could change the channels and mess up your friend when he's not paying attention. That's always fun. So overall, the Wavebird looked really slick. It had like this matte silver color to it, and I loved it. I remember like playing with my friend and seeing how far we could go away in his house from it, not knowing that the range was pretty clear. It was 34 feet or 10 meters is how far away you could go with the controller.
It was kind of a bummer that it didn't have rumble built in.
Yeah, it did not have rumble, because I think that would just suck the battery pretty quick.
Yeah, for sure.
Is my guess.
It lasted for a long time without rumble.
Yeah, in fact, I actually, on most of my games now, I turn off rumble on Xbox just because I don't want to use it. And I also like to, like if I'm playing like a shooter, you know, I know it's going to vibrate at this time, I'll just turn it off. So, fun fact, Wavebird, the name, is a nod to the code name Dolphin. I had no idea, because it's like a dolphin, like a wave bird, like an ocean bird. It's cool.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense.
Yeah, I had no idea. Now, another thing that happened with the GameCube is they had Game Boy functionality. I never used this. Did you use this?
I used it for Animal Crossing. Would use it. You could download like a thing that let you draw t-shirt designs on your Game Boy. So I did that.
That's so cool.
And there was like a mini game thing too, where you went to the fisherman's island, and he would basically put you on your Game Boy, and you could like do some Animal Crossing stuff on your Game Boy.
Yeah, I should mention that this is kind of cool because this is again Nintendo cares. I'm going to say that they were working a lot on the Game Boy Advance prior to the GameCube coming out. That was like their big thing they were pushing was this handheld. And then they're like, instead of just giving up on it, they're like, we're going to make it so if you have your Game Boy Advance, you can hook it in and use it as a secondary screen and controller. So it became your controller, which I thought was kind of cool.
That's pretty cool.
Connected via the link cable. And there were not a lot of games supported on this, but as Tyler said, Animal Crossing, I didn't have that one on my list. But the two big ones were Legend of Zelda, Four Swords Adventures, and Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles.
Oh, yeah. That was the only way to play multiplayer when you played Crystal Chronicles.
Oh, was to use the Game Boy?
Yep.
That's cool.
Couldn't do it with multiple controllers. You had to have Game Boys.
Also, I think Game Boy Advance or Game Boy Advance SP, I guess technically, was the last line of Game Boys before they switched to the Nintendo DS.
Yeah, they had the Game Boy Micro also.
Oh, I didn't know about that one. It's a cool one.
Yeah, it's like a really small one that doesn't play... It only plays Game Boy Advance games. It doesn't play older Game Boy games.
Oh, well, here's a thing I forgot to mention, because I'm new to this whole GameCube thing. I never had one as a kid, by the way. I just would play my friends, and I really liked it. There were 8 GameCube games that supported network connectivity. Did you know this? There was online gaming.
8.
Yeah, but 5 of those had internet support, and 3 of them were only LAN.
Okay, so Double Dash. I'm trying to name them now off the top of my head. Double Dash.
Do you want to name them? Because I actually have the list right here. So you try to name... Do you want to name the LAN ones?
Yeah, the LAN ones. I know Mario Kart Double Dash had LAN support. I know that Kirby Air Ride had LAN support.
That's the second one. There's one more. And it's kind of something... Do you want a hint?
Yeah.
It's kind of a game that you mentioned liking that involves...
1080 Avalanche?
It is. Wow,
no.
You did it. That's all 3 of them. Those are the 3 LAN support ones. The internet ones were...
I know Phantasy Star Online, 1 and 2. Do we count that as 2?
Yep, that's 2.
Okay, they're on the same disc.
There's actually another one that's going to fool you. The Phantasy Star Online Episode 1 and 2 Plus is a separate game.
Oh, okay.
And then there's Phantasy Star Online 3 Card Revolution.
Yeah.
And then there was a cooperative RPG called Homeland that I've never heard of.
I've never heard of that.
And then there was a baseball game with DLC titled Jikyo Powerful Pro Yaku 10.
Must have been Japan only.
Japan only. But yeah, so if you wanted to play online, you had to install an official broadband or modem adapter in their system, since the GameCube did not have any, it didn't have any out-of-the-box stuff.
Yeah.
You had to do it this way. And it's also important to notice that Nintendo never really commissioned any servers or internet things to interface with the console. So there was
They're just if you want to add internet to your game, go ahead. It's on you.
Yeah, there was no internet browser like there is now. There was no nothing. It was just, you got to figure this out if you want to do it. And especially because it's weird to me too that the LAN support then are on 2 Nintendo games, Air Ride and Double Dash. And yet they didn't even try to push it even more. But I see there's a picture, and I forgot to put this in the notes, so I'm straight up using Wikipedia, full disclosure for this section. I hope it's okay with all the team here. But the Ethernet cord plugs into the right side of the GameCube. And then in this picture, they actually have a keyboard, a GameCube controller keyboard, GameCube
for Phantasy Star Online.
Stretched out for Phantasy Star Online, the full keyboard, which I think is so funny. I want to find someone that was a diehard Phantasy Star Online player and talk about this, because it seems
played
that game seems to really influence a lot of early online console gaming.
It was a neat game. I played it a little while after its heyday and never online, but it was very interesting.
So that's the online part that I forgot to add in there.
The one thing I want to add.
Go ahead.
So for those 3 LAN games that you can't play online, but you can link your GameCubes together, there are solutions available online that will you run a program on your computer, and then you can like play online with those games if you like. It makes your computer look like a GameCube. It's sort of like Xbox Connect or X-Link Kai that existed for the original Xbox that let you play System Link games online. Same kind of deal. I think it's called Warp Pipe for GameCube, but I think they might have shut down recently. But anyway, there are ways to play Mario Kart Double Dash online.
It's good to know. I had no idea. Once again, Tyler just dispensing some free knowledge for all you people with wanting to play Double Dash, which we'll talk about next episode because it's probably my favorite Mario Kart.
It's a pretty good one.
It's a pretty great Mario Kart. Okay, the last thing I need to talk about with the history of the Nintendo GameCube is something I had never heard of until like doing the research today and yesterday. And that is the Panasonic Q.
Ooh.
And the Panasonic Q was a special alternate design for the GameCube, only released in Japan on December 13th, 2001, that made the Q... What made it special, like what made the Q special, was it was capable of playing DVDs. It had the mini DVR player, and it also had a built-in DVD tray. So,
oh, dang.
Yeah. Other than the DVD player, though, the Panasonic Q also featured a backlit LCD screen, which is kind of in the top of it. So when you turn it on,
like
it
a
looks
little thing that would like tell you what scene you're on and stuff, like the front of a DVD player.
Yeah, exactly. And then it had a front-loading slide disc tray, which I already mentioned, and an optical sound output supporting Dolby Digital 5.1 or DTS. It even had a separate subwoofer jack, so if you wanted to plug your own speakers in. This thing, like looking at it online, it had also a stainless steel chassis. It looks like one of those really intense Bluetooth speakers you see on construction sites.
Oh, yeah, it does.
You know what I mean? Like it looks like that. Like this thing is meant to be beaten, okay? It's going to take a beating while you're using this thing, but it looks really intense, and obviously it wasn't very successful. I didn't even look up. I wonder how much a Panasonic Q goes for right now on
eBay?
On eBay. I'm going to look it up. So Panasonic Q...
It had two handles on it. That's how big it was. So the GameCube, the original GameCube had a handle to carry it around like, I don't know, like a bag or something. This one had two. That's how big it is.
All right. Pre-owned. It's $240 plus $50 shipping from Japan.
That actually doesn't seem too unreasonable for like the collector's item-ness of it.
It's definitely used, and according, it says also... in quotes, junk, not working tray, condition D. So you're buying a broken system that, in theory, you could probably fix it, though, if you have the electronics know-how. That would be an interesting
project.
Yeah, but it's a cool thing. I had no idea this thing existed at all.
Wow.
I didn't know. So it's pretty cool. Look up a Panasonic Q, everybody, if you're feeling curious about your GameCube and want it to play movies.
That's pretty cool.
If you love the GameCube and refuse to update. All right, so that's all for the history for this episode today. And then next episode, we're going to talk about the game timeline like we did last time for it. Because I think that's Xbox. Cool. I want to use a whole episode to dedicate it to the games because I don't want to do a 2-hour episode. And I don't think Tyler does either, you know?
Yeah.
So that's how it's going to be. Give us a little break, come back, think about it. So...
We can talk about our nostalgia memories too, as well.
Oh yeah,
if you have
I got a lot of nostalgia memories playing with my friends, and also there's one game that creeped me out, and I want to talk about it.
Great.
And you probably know what it is, but I don't want to.
There's a few creepy games on the GameCube.
I don't want to mention it, but we'll talk about it next episode. So
okay.
I don't know why I'm pointing at the camera so much, but I'm really serious about it. So anyway, Tyler, what you been playing?
Well, I got back into Marvel's Spider-Man on PlayStation 4. And it really grabbed me. I played it for a couple of hours, like shortly after it came out, and I was like, oh yeah, this is really cool. Okay, well, I'm gonna go eat dinner or whatever, and I put it down, and then I never picked it back up. And then I saw Into the Spider-Verse, and I was like, oh man, I gotta get back on the Spider-Man train. So I've spent the past couple of days just playing Spider-Man, and it is so fun. I'm thinking about going for 100%, getting the platinum trophy on it, except I think there are some challenges that are actually going to be really, really difficult, and I'm not really going to want to do them.
Yeah, that's what always happens with those kind of games.
Yeah, where you do like the AR missions in Batman, and it just gets so hard, you're just like, I don't, this isn't worth it anymore.
Exactly. You're like, this isn't worth my time. I'm not having fun anymore. So
Yeah,
that's when you gotta learn
so-
to call it quits. Oh, can I skip back to GameCube for a second?
Yes.
I wanted to list 4 of the articles I used because they're really great. Okay.
Oh, okay.
First article I looked at on IGN came out in September 26, 2001, and it's called Nintendo Wavebird. And it just goes through the whole talking about Nintendo Wavebird. It even has the design of an early Wavebird, which looks really bad, which I love. So I would check that out too. Also, there was a NintendoWorldReport.com had an article that was a hands-on preview of the GameCube controller before the system came out. This was on October 6, 2001. He got an import controller in the mail. He talks about it. It's pretty cool. They also talk about that Nintendo thumb thing in there too. There's also an article called It's Alive, which is a IGN scoop on the GameCube before it was released. It came out on March 12th, 1999. I was 11 years old. And then there was an Engadget article called Year One GameCube versus Wii. That was really cool because it showed what the mistakes the GameCube made. Because the GameCube had kind of a rough launch, whereas the launch for the Wii was a lot smoother. And as we all know, the Wii was very successful, as all of the plastic tennis rackets in the dump right now can attest to that. So anyway, sorry, I just forgot to mention the sources up front afterwards, so I wanted to say it. And then we also used a lot of Wikipedia, and so that's just the way the world works now, you know. And they were cited, so it's fine. But okay, that's one thing that people get mad about Wikipedia for, and I'm like, guys, they are cited, and there's people looking at it, and
There's references all along the bottom.
Yeah, there are. There's tons of them, especially on the GameCube. There's a lot of stuff on the GameCube. So, okay, you want me to tell you what I've been playing?
Yes.
I started today. I started playing a game called Subnautica
Ooh, I've heard of this.
for
I don't
PC.
know anything about it.
So the story is your ship, you wake up, your ship is crashing. Your big, gigantic ship is crashing on an alien world, and you get in the life pod, and you're alone, and the world is an ocean world. And you have to, you have this thing called a fabricator or something, I think, that just makes stuff for you, but you don't know the recipes, and you have to go through the local fauna and flora to find stuff, and then turn it into a scuba tank or an advanced scuba tank. And I just built the sea scooter thing that you hold on to as a diver, and it moves you around the water.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. I played it for about an hour and a half today, and I got really into it. And I got so into it that I really didn't want to Google stuff, but I had to Google a couple times because I'm like, how do I get filtered water? I don't want my guy to die. So turns out it's a bladderfish. You got to catch a bladderfish. They're pretty abundant, you know. So, but it's a really cool game. It's very colorful. It's like what all these alien fish look like, and it looks like it gets really scary, you know.
Yeah.
Because you go into the deep dark
the deeper
depths.
you go.
Yeah, and so I just got the unlock for the mini sub, the submersible, but I don't have the vehicle thing to build it, and I got to figure out how to do that. So, also Tyler and I've been playing Destiny because we're friends, and that's what we do. So,
Yep. Destiny, that's just always there. It's a baseline.
it's
comfort
important
food.
to know. Everyone should know it. Yeah, but I think that's it for the day. I think we really did it justice. The GameCube is a really cool system that I feel like was very underrated.
Yeah. And there's a lot of good games for it, but it had a lot of great games. I don't think it had the same number of great games as the PlayStation 2 and the Xbox did, and it didn't play DVDs. So
yeah, I mean, that's a big marketing thing now for a Xbox or a PlayStation. And even a Switch doesn't have a way to play DVDs. So it's kind of tough.
Yeah, Nintendo still has never made anything that can play DVDs.
Got to go for that home entertainment living room thing that Xbox is going for.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, that's it for the day. I said all the things up top, so we don't have to say anything but goodbye. Do you want to say goodbye, Tyler?
Goodbye, Tyler.
This has been a Podaholics Comedy Network presentation. Podaholics.com